It's recording right now. You want to sit here?
Jake Allen flew here from Eureka Springs, Arkansas. Just to be with you, he is a 40-year-old English drama math teacher. From Arkansas. His adorable wife, Piper, is right over there. His two children, Charlie, age 7, and Georgia, age 4, are also adorable, and they are in Arkansas. They're right here. Please welcome my friend, Jake Allen. Thank you. To clarify, that's English and drama and math, not some weird hybrid of the three. I didn't know that correctly. This is the story of one of those little, seemingly minor moments that have a lasting, life-changing effect on you, and of the man who created that moment just by being who he was, and of what happened when I tried to get in touch with him 20 years later. I'll start at the beginning. As we mentioned, I'm a teacher. Teachers love free stuff. I quickly discovered how to travel for free by taking students on educational tours. 2 years ago, I was getting ready to lead such a group to Germany. I thought I would try to meet up with the Hoyneman family, the family I lived with for 3 months at age 16 in 1989. I was living in Alberta, Canada at the time. After a blind Google search, I found Miria, the girl who had stayed with my family that same year. I emailed her, and we caught up. She's got a kid, a bit older than my son Charlie. She works for a zoo. A zoo. Her mom, Iris, and younger sister, Ilka, which is love those names, they're doing fine. But Gerhard, her father, had passed away quite suddenly from a heart attack 10 years prior. The family was taken by surprise. No warning signs, no family history, none of that. But they had all picked up the pieces and moved on. I was floored. Reading those 2 or 3 sentences, I was physically shaken. Gerhard had been in his late 40s or 50s when I met him, so by this time he would have been 70. No surprise that he would have passed on. I had half expected him or his wife to have already done so. But finding out definitively rattled me. It was all I could think of. For several days, I pictured him. Tan, broad of shoulder, attractive salt and pepper hair, his roar of a laugh, his roars of frustration when he lost a round of Arschloch. For those of you who speak English, that is the card game asshole. The way he drove 150 miles per hour on the Autobahn in that sweet white Audi, flashing his high beams at, and riding the bumper of the poor BMW going only 120 in the left lane. The way he roared as he waved his middle finger at the poor Arschloch as he passed him. Miria and Ilka yelling at him from the back seat. I don't know the exact translation, but it's something like, "You're going to kill us, you maniac!" How do you say road rage in German? I don't know the translation, but I think it's something like Straßenbahnangst. Somebody tell me if I'm wrong. But it wasn't just the loss of the man. I hadn't seen him in 20 years. We weren't even that close, really. He wasn't anything like my own father, who, honestly, I'm not that close to. So what was it? 1989. I landed at the Frankfurt airport in what was then West Germany. Gerhard and Miria were there to pick me up. I had met Gerhard 6 months prior, when he flew to Canada to visit his daughter as she stayed with us. We took him to the big sites, the West Edmonton Mall, largest mall in the world, by the way, the legislature building, a weekend trip to Jasper and Banff National Park to see the Wild West. Let me back up a bit. I was a shy kid. My biggest fear, pet peeve, whatever, was that someone would notice me, look at me. In school, I hated to be called on. I turned red. I never had but about one friend at a time, and it was always someone who needed a friend as badly as I did. That one person who needed someone lower in status than them someone they could feel superior to, someone who would take the abuse that they themselves suffered and could then dump onto someone else. So I surprised myself one day by asking my dad if I could join a cultural exchange program sponsored by the province of Alberta and the state of Hesse in Germany. It was a reciprocal exchange program. When I filled out the application, I had to check whether I wanted a male, female, or doesn't matter. I checked, doesn't matter. What if they sent a hot German girl to me? That would be my best shot at acquiring a girlfriend. No, none of the girls at my school were going to give me a shot. I did end up getting a female partner. A pretty one, too. But the fantasy never took off. I was too shy and awkward to ever make any kind of move on her. Plus, once she got there, it was more like having another sister around. My family treated her well. She was part of the family. I basically left her alone at school. I just didn't know how to interact with her. So I chose my usual strategy, avoidance. I would have felt guilty about it, but she seemed to do just fine. She got a boyfriend at my school. My parents took her to Disneyland. I stayed home. It was my choice. It was my choice. Anyway, the weekend that her father, Gerhard, visited us, we were out in this fancy schmancy restaurant. Very unusual for my family, but Gerhard was clearly at home. I ordered a steak. I don't remember what anyone else had, but my steak was kind of fatty, gristly. Gerhard asked me during the course of the meal what I thought of it, and well, I told him. Didn't think anything about it. When the waiter came over to ask, as waiters do, never expecting a negative answer, "Hey, how's everyone's meal?" Gerhard told him. No emotion or accusation, just point blank. His steak is too fat. I was mortified. The waiter didn't know what to do. He kind of hemmed and hawed. Later, I realized, well, that's how Germans are. You ask them, and they will tell you. They didn't get that you were supposed to pretend that everything was happiness and roses all the time. They didn't know avoidance. I wish I had learned that. But I learned something else instead. It was April that I traveled to Germany. Staying with the Hornemans was interesting. They loved each other fiercely. But when there was a difference of opinion, you heard about it. Fiercely. They were blunt with each other, and I seemed to be out of the line of fire, mostly. The most I ever got was, "Jake, beeil dich," which means hurry yourself up. I was always late. Or, "Ach, du lieber Gott," which literally translates to something like, "Oh, aren't you God's little loved one?" I prefer to think of it as the German version of, "Oh, bless his little heart." The family did treat me like one of their own from day one. We had the meals together, the trips. We played cards at the dinner table, Arschloch being the favorite. One time when Gerhard lost a particularly heated competitive round, he pounded the table, lifted his face to the heavens, and yelled, "Scheiße!" Just like that. For those of you who don't speak German, that translates to shit! They spoke only German to me, which is why I was there, after all, to learn the language. English was forbidden in their house. Except for when Oma visited, that's Miriam's grandmother. She either didn't get the memo or was just dying to practice her English, but no matter how many times they told her, "I verstehe gut Deutsch, Oma," she always spoke nothing but English with me. I had to attend school while I was there. I had no clue what was going on at all for most of the 3 months I was there. So by the end of the second month, I got the words, but not the content of the courses. This was a gymnasium level, college-bound, college preparatory high school, so all of the classes are basically AP level. I was not an AP student. For the first 6 weeks I was there, I had a pattern. I went to school, rode the bus home, went up to my room, and read. The local library had an English language section, so I checked out a lot of books. Don Quixote, Faulkner, Patricia Highsmith. I read a lot. When I got tired of reading, I wrote home to the family or friends. I had actually managed to acquire a couple of non-abusive friends by then. There was a radio cassette player in the room, so I listened to Armed Forces Radio or one of the cassette tapes that I had brought with me, REM. My family duty was to mow the yard, so I did that once a week. In school, with the exception of my English teacher, I was the resident expert after all, my professors pretty much left me alone. The extreme example being Herr Dr. Schmidt, who, one afternoon, after my having been in his political science class for merely 3 months, looked at me. And he looked at the rest of the class and said, "Wer ist denn das?" Loosely translated, "Who the hell is that?" That was kind of heavenly for my introverted self, though. Then about the same time this happened. Gerhard asked me if I wanted to see Paris. Paris? The weekend of May, but whatever. Are you kidding? Yes, without hesitation, yes! Then the phone rang. This group of students that I had traveled with were spread out over a handful of nearby cities, and some official or other had arranged for a trip for us to go to Berlin. West Berlin, remember? In June. I was a bit nervous about crossing the East German border with my U.S. diplomatic passport, but my father had assured me ahead of time that it would be no big deal. So guess who was on the phone? The head of the Berlin trip. Date mix-up. The Berlin trip is now the weekend of May, whatever it was. So I had to choose. Paris, West Berlin. Well, I could always see the Berlin Wall some other day, couldn't I? This is 1989. Communism isn't going anywhere? So Paris it was. And in retrospect, I don't regret the choice. Beautiful, enchanting, everything anyone had ever said about Paris times 10. I was in love. We walked all day. We picnicked in parks, we explored churches, watched the naughty puppet show in the Latin Quarter. It was to this day, I find few culinary pleasures more immaculate than that perfect croissant with butter and jam. So on the third and final night in Paris, we're eating dinner at this tiny restaurant. The dad's in the kitchen, mom's waiting tables, kids are bussing, pouring wine, washing dishes. We're sharing a table with another family because there's maybe 150 square feet of space in the whole place. This was the one time Gerhard spoke English to me. His bluntness came out in full force. No filter. He said, "You're spending too much time in your room. Why have you traveled all those thousands of miles? Spent all that money? To read?" It wasn't mean, but without pulling any punches, he informed me that I needed to get out of the room. Explore. Quit hiding. Talk to people. Listen to people. See what's there. Get lost. I gave you an unlimited bus pass. Use it for God's sake. The lecture lasted no more than 30 seconds. More or less. And then our conversation went on to other things. Pleasant. Roses. But it hit me right then. He was right. I'd already missed out on so much. One time I had faked a headache because the family was going to a dressage event at a palace nearby. And I didn't want to go. I was always not wanting to go. Not just in Germany, everywhere. That was my life. But for the last 6 weeks, I went out. I took the bus. I explored. I had conversations with shopkeepers in German. I could understand and be understood. I got to know Wiesbaden, other cities we traveled to. I didn't fake any more headaches. And when I returned back to my normal life on Canadian soil, I didn't notice it, but I was different. I wasn't afraid of being seen. Quite the contrary, I started to crave attention. I majored in theater in college, became a teacher. If you want to know what judgment is, I have 25 poor teenagers staring at you. You're trying to entertain them. To this day, whatever group I'm in, professional, whatever, if the group has to have a spokesman, they all look at me. and I don't mind. So, what had I been mourning? I had really wanted to see Gerhard again, to thank him for that moment, to tell him that that one 30-second lecture had made a lifetime of difference for me. Or maybe I just wanted to beat him one last time at Arschloch, to hear one last Scheisse! Thank you.